Welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. It's all about interviewing everyday, ordinary Christians who have strong roots of faith and then applying it to our own lives. Whether you are seeking, whether you're new to faith, or maybe you've been following Jesus for a really long time, come grow strong roots with us. Hey, Strong Roots, we are back and we're talking all about identity. And today we are talking about the fact that we are not alone as Christians. God is always with us. And I am really excited to talk about this with this intergenerational panel of ladies because this is a common feeling that we are alone. And I think all throughout our life experiences from being a child to being an adult, it doesn't matter how old you are, you still have to fight this feeling of like, I am so alone right now. So I'm going to start out by asking, I want all you guys to answer, what makes you specifically feel alone?
Can I?
Oh, yeah, girl.
Rejection.
Yeah.
I've been rejected at different times. It hurts big time, especially when it's someone that you're very close to, a family member. And I can't imagine the feeling of feeling rejected by God. I feel that would be the end, the absolute end. And thank goodness He never does reject us whatsoever. Right. But yeah, for me, it's rejection and being able to cope with that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. I think we can all relate to that. How about you guys?
Yeah. I think I feel alone at times. I kind of it's kind of a pity party for me at times.
Mm-hmm.
Like we kind of talked about this earlier, but I see other people with their friends. Even I am 52 years old. I shouldn't have to be like dealing with that, but sometimes I still do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just see myself as being so different than your average 52-year-old. And so I feel alone, but I let my mind go there though. And I think that's the problem is
the mind.
The mind kind of just goes down that hole of, cause it's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
You know?
And feelings aren't facts.
Right.
Nope.
Right.
Oh, that's so
Amen.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. How about
I need
you?
a t-shirt that says that.
Yeah. We need a t-shirt.
I like it. Awesome.
Mine, like, I would say a specific example of when I felt alone. I went away to college for a year and a half, and then when I moved back to DeMont, and then at this point, all my friends that I had had before didn't live here anymore. I didn't really have new friends yet. Like, I had people that I could hang out with, but there wasn't a closeness or relationship. So, like, actually, like, I was kind of alone.
Right.
You were.
But more than just feeling like, oh, I need to make friends, I was like, no one wants to hang out with me. Like, no one's going to want to be my friend. And then I'm getting married soon, and I'm moving to where he lives. And so it's going to be, like, similar again. So I think, like, that will be interesting. But, like, the first time when I moved back, I didn't have God, and I didn't, like, have a relationship with God. So I know it's going to be different this time because, like, I'm sure I still will get lonely, and I'm sure I'll still be, like, sad or homesick or whatever that is. But having a new outlook and just being like, I know I'm going to make friends.
Yep.
I have to put the effort in, though, to, like, rebuild those relationships because it takes the effort to do that.
Absolutely. It's cool you said that because one of the loneliest times in my life was when we moved here from Minnesota and moving away from family, friends, all the relationships I created for 29 years and moving here and John being so busy and everyone excited to see him and even going out to restaurants and like people knowing him. I feel like though during that period, Jesus so sweetly, I was like, who's my best friend? Who's going to be my best friend? Who are going to be my friends? Yeah. And he so sweetly was like, just like the Israelites wanted a king, but I was better. He's like, will you stop so focusing on who's going to be your close friends? And will you just take this sweet season where you don't have close friendships and make me your best, make me your king, make me your best friend. And it like was the foundation for the church, like me to actually be a good friend when we moved here because he was number one. And not that I wasn't all in, but that loneliness to your point, like trials bring growth.
Right.
And that loneliness brought a deeper and more meaningful relationship with Jesus. And I think that's the cool part about this topic today is that we aren't alone, but like even when we feel alone, it can be the thrust to having a deep relationship with him. Patty, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh. you were gonna, so I'm like, okay.
Well, I always have something to say.
Yes, but okay,
No, you know what, that is true. And I remember when I moved down here, I came from the city, a large family. We moved down here, golly, it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't built up like it is now. And it got dark real early. I knew nobody at all. And it was like, golly, what do I do? And yeah, you have to meet new people. And
Right.
what helped me was finding a church. And
Yes.
that was the biggest benefit of all. So that's your first thing, is find a church as soon as you move.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How has he shown up in your loneliness? Like, I kind of shared an example, but like, how about you guys? Any specific example from your life where you're like, God showed up in this moment in the midst of my loneliness?
He did for me when I lost my first husband and living down here with a baby and knowing nobody. And I ended up growing so close to God at that time because everything was long distance back then. I didn't have the money to be calling home because all the family lived up north. And grabbing onto God, I used to go to bed with my Bible under my pillow. I just felt that was a closeness, that he was right there with me. And he stayed with, it was amazing how he brought me through that.
Yeah.
And, I was offered to move back home with my parents, and I said, I can't do that. I have to be independent, but never independent of Christ. And it's like what you're saying. I mean, when we start, leaning into him and let him be the main focus, everything else falls in order.
Right. Oh, it's so true.
good.
That's such a great example.
That's good.
Susie, Brittany, do you have an example?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about trials that kind of bring that loneliness. My first child, Kayla, she was 4 months old when my ex-husband left us. And I was working night shifts and I had no family. So, I mean, physically
Right.
alone. And I had nobody, hardly any money. I mean, it was just completely, you just feel like you're in the pit.
Right.
All by yourself.
All by yourself.
But you realize, okay, it's me and God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can either climb my way out of this with his help, or I can just sit here and wallow in it and make my life miserable and my daughter's life miserable.
Right.
So it was really just kind of like that gear shift in your mind. You either do it or you're going to be miserable.
Yep.
And he gives you the strength
and he
to
does.
pull through.
It's like he gives you that perseverance, and it's just mind-blowing how I look back on that. I'm like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
But it was God.
It was.
He just pulled
Yep.
me out of it and changed my mindset on how I thought of myself and life in general.
Oh,
I keep
that's
looking
good.
back because I'm so much older than you girls. So I have more to look back on. But I do look back and I think, how in the world we got through this, Lord?
Oh,
Trial after trial after trial. And instead of pulling away, getting closer and closer
Yes.
and closer and seeing more of God in ways I would have never fathomed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Isn't that neat? Even when, do you guys look back? So before I even chose to follow Jesus, I can look back on my life and be like, surely you were with me.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I'm like, oh man, that could have been real bad.
Right.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
we
your
shouldn't even be
hand-
alive.
Right. And his hand has been on us. And he,
Yes.
what is that? Knock. What is that in Revelations? Like knock and open the door, and he'll come in
Yes.
to eat a meal with you,
Yes.
and you with him. And like the way you could, I feel like when we choose to follow Jesus and we are his, like I think he opens our eyes to the time. He was just
Yes.
waiting. He was just, his hand was on us. He was just knocking,
Yeah.
but he was with us. And it's just so cool.
Right.
But then when we are his, like truly choose to follow him and accept his love and forgiveness and all the great things we're talking about, just the way he literally is in us and pulls
know.
us through things
Yeah.
is miraculous.
Yep.
Ah. So ladies, when you feel alone, what reminds you that God is with you? Is it difficult to remind yourself that he's with you in those moments?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I was when I was younger, but not anymore. I know he's with me wherever I go. And this is where being grounded in His Word is so important, because He tells you in His Word, I will never leave you. I will never give up on you. I am with you. I go before you. I come behind you. I walk right next to you. It's like you're
Yes.
enveloping me.
Yeah.
And so you're never, ever alone. And I love that His Word is so promising and encouraging.
Yes. Oh, so true. How about you guys? Anything to add to that?
I mean, this kind of answers your question, but also kind of not. Kind of just like a thought about like
thoughts.
what
We
we're
like
talking
thoughts.
about. Yeah. But I think about when I was my loneliest, and I think like I was praying for like community or friends or whatever that is, and that didn't happen right away because like one, it takes work, but two, like I feel like God had to work in me first because
Yeah.
in my friendships, I wasn't a good friend. I wasn't there for people. I was non-committal, and that's why I didn't have friends, because I wasn't pursuing, like, going after people, like, trying to be there for people. So it was almost like God was like, hey, like, spend this time with me.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'll give you this blessing almost. Like, that's how it felt, like, because I'm like, why, like, just give me these friends. But I think then I would have filled that God hole with friends instead. So it was
right.
almost like I needed that time to be alone with God
Yeah.
for me to see how I needed him.
Right.
And for me to like, for him to work in me so that I was able then to be a good friend and overflow into people, because I shouldn't be just expecting things from other people.
Right.
I should only be filling that peace with God.
And I like how you said that, needing to be alone. And there are times in our life where we need to be alone in order to have the
Right.
one-on-one with God
Yeah.
that we would never have
Yep.
had.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. So there's a difference between being physically alone and just emotionally, spiritually alone. Like, I think all of us have been in a crowded room and
yes.
felt
Yeah.
alone. I want to ask this question: whether you're actually alone in your house or in a crowded room alone with people, what is it as Christians? Like, we know we're never alone. Like, what is the lie you tell yourself to believe that you're all alone?
I think it's hard when you, like you had said, Brittany, going somewhere and not knowing everybody. I know when we first started attending this church, we didn't really know hardly anybody.
Yeah.
And you walk in and at first you feel alone, and realizing that you do need to assert yourself at a certain point.
Yep.
You've got to open up, and God helps you do that, of course. So, yeah, and by not knowing anybody, you're being critical on your own self
Yeah.
that, well, they're not going to like me when they really know me, and maybe I shouldn't have done this or been here. Maybe I should go to a different church. And no, give it time. Give it time, That's usually, I do all this stuff in my head. But
Right.
then when you open up and, God never gives up.
Right. Would you say, this is a big extreme word, but would you say it's selfishness?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
when I think about when I feel lonely, it's because it's all about me.
Right.
Yep.
They should be
Right.
pursuing me. They should notice me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
It's like a pity party.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
You nailed
in
it.
some
Yeah.
instances, not so much maybe physically lonely. That's a little bit different, but feeling lonely.
Yeah.
It's I remember there was a time in my life, a few years ago, that I was just feeling really lonely for some reason.
Yeah.
And so I actually bought a couple of books on loneliness. And, like we said, feelings are fleeting, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even read the books, and I snapped out of it. And it's like they're still sitting in there now.
Pile of dust. Yes.
If you ever get lonely again.
Yeah. You have the book.
Right, just in case.
Yes. Well, I heard a pastor share this. I love that you said that, because again, there's nothing new under the sun. All of us have felt lonely. We continue to feel lonely. I think Satan loves to isolate and kill, steal, destroy. But I heard a pastor say, when you're feeling lonely, reach out to someone.
Absolutely.
If you're feeling discouraged, go and encourage
Yeah.
someone. And like, there's nothing like forcing yourself to
Right.
give what you're wanting to get.
Right.
It's almost like this beautiful exercise, that spiritual exercise that actually, I don't feel that lonely anymore.
Right. And it's taking your thoughts out of yourself. You're not
Yes.
thinking
Exactly.
of your
Yes.
loneliness.
Yeah, it makes you focus on the greatest commandment, loving God and loving people,
Yep.
instead of the sinfulness inside of us.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like, let me just focus more on myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so good. Ladies, what are ways you personally invite God's presence into your life regularly?
Well, this one was easy. Prayer,
Yeah.
praise, reading his word, and fellowshipping with other believers. We need each other.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really do. And when you start praising God, it's like, wasn't that bad after all.
Right.
I'm getting in a good mood.
Yes.
And it does. It's contagious. And then when you get in that, because when you praise, it just opens up your heart.
Yeah.
And then you want to be happy with other people and you want to do
Right.
good things and bless people.
Right.
And how much more do you love God when you see somebody else's love for
Oh,
Yes.
like
yeah.
anyone? You see, everyone's like, oh, this person is so cool. And you're like, oh, I should think they're cool. So like when you're like, I really love God, or you see someone doing that, you're like, yeah, like he's so good.
He's so good. Now that you
Oh,
mention
yeah.
it, I love him too. Yeah.
Oh, seeing people talk about God when they have a real relationship with Him, it's inspiring.
Yes.
And it almost I would imagine like the Holy Spirit, it puts fuel on the fire and like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, like you get with another believer and you start talking God, it's like, man, am I happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right.
thank you, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Susie, Brittany, what are other ways you invite God's presence or remind yourself that His presence is already in you?
I think sometimes it's just unspoken words throughout the day, like in the morning, I always give my first to him. We did that
Yes.
podcast and just devotions, prayer, and just listening. So that's my first that I give to him. But throughout the day, I'm mindful of him in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it could be just an unspoken word. I just see something. It could just be something tiny, and I'm like, oh, that's so awesome, Lord. I
Yeah.
don't say it, but I'm just mindful of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just it's. I'm not a big, pray out loud person. But internally, I just acknowledge him throughout the day a lot, especially on the
Yes.
farm. There's so much.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
So much to be like, wow, that's so cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so true. I think do you find the little things sometimes the best things?
Right.
They are.
Like you care about, what is it? Like if he cares about the wildflowers, how much
Yeah.
more does he
Right.
care about us? But like when he answers a silly prayer or even to your point, an unspoken prayer.
Yes.
Where it's like, you know what? I'm making this up. Like I really would like those shoes. And then all of a sudden like Goodwill has them for $2. Like,
Yeah.
You're
Thank
like,
you.
yeah. Like it's just the little things sometimes like how did this was you
Yeah.
know, those make me smile.
Yeah. But rooting our identity in God's presence, I think is just, you look around and what are, especially the younger generation, what are they rooting? You probably see this at school. What are they rooting their identity in now? It's not in God's presence, It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the world, and Satan is telling them what they think they should be and who they should talk to, and God's presence is left out, and that's just something that's heavy on my heart. And I know being a teacher, you probably see a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, I think like you think about how much we get caught up in like little things or like caring about things that don't matter. And you think back to when you were a kid and you're like, oh, we didn't think about that. But then you see a kid that's like 7 or 8 and they're the same as us. Like the same things we struggle with, they already know about it. They're already worried about it. They're already thinking the same things.
Yes.
So like you said, like I think God gives all of us a mantle for whoever that is. Like for me, I have little kids and like we all have people that God put in our lives. So like I think just reminding them when we can about like like you said, seeking God first, or just like the little things. Because I think like everyone knows the answer, like pray more, read your Bible. Like, okay, like everyone knows that. But like you talked about like on the farm and like just being like, wow, look at God's beautiful creation. Look at that thing
Yes.
God did. Or wow, God answered that prayer. Oh, your owie feels better. Like that was God. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
just,
yes.
like to get them to like point their lives back to God and like rest in his presence, just like we need to, like, and we get caught up wanting approval from friends or something. They do the same thing.
And do you think when we acknowledge God's presence in our life, we're able to see his presence more? Like I think when we acknowledge in the spiritual, we see in the physical. I have this funny story. Long story short, we had a balloon in the car. The kids opened the door. This is years ago. Balloon flies away. Lots of tears. Mommy, will you pray to God that he gives us a balloon? And I'm like, it was at the church. Like, there's no way. There's no way. It's just like, okay, like, so I pray and I'm like, God, would you please bring that balloon back to us? No joke. They're like, Mommy, let's go look. I'm like, okay, go around the corner. I got tied in a farmer's sprinkler.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, but I just love, like, if I didn't acknowledge his presence and the fact that, and not that he can do whatever he wants, but he chose to answer that prayer. But it was just such a sweet moment with my kids of like, God's presence is here. He cares about this balloon. And I'm not gonna lie, I could not believe that it flew. I just was like, you are too cool. But it's just, I think when I have found in my day to day, when I'm not acknowledging him, I can't see, I don't have eyes to see him. I don't have ears to hear him. Would you say that's true in your guys' lives as well?
Yes.
What do you guys do? I know we said pray, read our Bibles, but like, is this a moment by moment? Do you guys actually, what are the unspoken prayers sometimes you say? Like, is it just like, God, let me see you today? Like, what do you guys talk to God about? For people who are like, I don't even know how to pray.
Yeah. I just see it as he's my friend.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he made the world. He's a special friend. But just little things, like I said, throughout the day, just being mindful of him, just even a thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
Or, wow. I say that a lot to myself. Wow.
Yes.
Crazy.
I know.
In a good way.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be an elaborate, prayer or just simple.
Yeah.
And those simple prayers are so touching. And the faith of a child, how you got to learn that day that God will answer any prayer at any time. And I love how he does that for little children to see that. And to have your child come up to you and say, Mommy, pray.
Yes.
And they believe.
They do.
And I love that God's thinking, you know what? Thank you. You're getting that balloon back,
Right.
It was your faith, not your mama's.
Right. I know. It is convicting, isn't it? When your child wants you to pray about it, or they pray over you for something. It's like, thank you.
And there's never a wrong prayer.
Right.
I got to be careful how I say that, huh? You always want it to be.
But you're just talking, like, as long as you're hurt.
Right,
I think we all know what you're saying. You don't have to be proper.
You don't have to be proper, and there doesn't have to be a limit. It doesn't have to be something big spiritual thing that you're praying for. It can be healing your cat. It can be a balloon. It can be, I planted my spring flowers too early one year, and the frost hit, and I went to church that morning. I said, and we would have stand up and prayer requests, and I said, would you pray for my flowers, my impatience? Because of my impatience, I planted them, and now the frost might kill them. And someone came up after church, why would you ask such a thing? I said, because God answers all prayer.
Yes.
And he saved my impatience.
Yes.
They didn't die. So, I love that any prayer, and it's those little ones that sometimes are the best.
Absolutely. Susie, what you got?
I've got a question for
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Okay, so being a pastor's wife, have you ever struggled with rooting your identity in man's approval versus Christ?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, it's a constant fight. And I think, but man's approval void. It leads nothing. It's not satisfying.
Right.
Like it doesn't lead to life.
No.
And so I think I'm so grateful to God. He reminds me all the time. Like it's empty. It's so empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that he is the only thing that truly satisfies. His approval is the only thing I truly want. And even when I fail and try to get it from someone, he's so wonderful, and like it just is empty. It'll feel good for a second, and then I just am like, that didn't make me a better person. That didn't add anything to my life. And so I think reminding myself all the time that we do things for the Lord and not for men.
Right.
And that's the
Yes.
only thing that truly makes me feel, and feelings aren't facts, but like truly fills me, and truly gives me purpose to continue to go and live the Great Commission throughout any trial. So yes, but he's so good and he brings me back. So thank you, Strong Roots, so much for joining us today. This has been such a great time talking about identity, and we cannot wait to see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Strong Roots podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to check us out on all our other social media platforms. And I want to let you know that I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.